Hello again, everybody, and here's an update on the Vendee Globe segment. You might notice I have all my sails down and I'm stationary because I reached France. There's one of the raceline marks. I reached Les Sables d'Olonne at about 3 p.m. this afternoon. I've been finishing my workday since then in a very pleasant French evening, and now I'm giving you a quick update. So, oh no, what did I press? So from the people we know, Joe has won, but it's a bit complicated because he missed the start, so the system doesn't consider him to be competing. So the race was technically run by the stranger Plam in just a tiny squeak under 11 days. Joe sort of unofficially came in second about halfway through that, so that was last night, Thursday night, and as it says here, I made it in 11 days, 18 hours. We have another competitor called JL who appears to have run aground, so I would say that Jerome here and Gaz have got a decent chance to overtake JL. The thing that's characterized this race is that the success in the race is pretty much directly correlated with taking a longer, more northerly course, curving all the way around, taking, you know, hundreds and hundreds of extra miles of distance for the sake of getting up where the really strong winds are in the northern Atlantic, out of the trade winds. Gaz and Jerome will have crossed by far the shortest distance, but the lack of wind has really hurt them. Here's my trace. So Joe and I and this other guy, Plam, pretty much went straight north all the way out of the trade winds across the horse latitudes, avoiding a big, very persistent low wind area here. And then it became a kind of curving... Well, a lot of it was a broad reach, actually. Pretty much no headwinds. The main problem was when the wind was directly at your back rather than directly ahead of you. So jibe, 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 jibe. Possibly made the mistake of getting myself into the wind shadow of this island. I don't know how precisely the wind shadow of the island is modelled in the game. It's a bit hard to tell with this not very good visualisation, but it's quite possible I cost myself half a day faffing about in the shadow of this island, having made the foolish choice to pass to the north of it instead of the south. It was the course I wanted, but I neglected to think about the wind impact of the island. Anyway, this was the point where Joe and I really diverged. While I was making this broad reach across here, closing the distance to the destination, Joe took the opposite approach, went off further to the north, got closer into the big storm that was coming through, and increased his lead on me. Part of my plan worked. I basically wanted to be here at the Azores and then expecting southwesterly or southerly winds for several days. My plan was basically to broad reach on the pretty much a single broad reach all the way up here into the Bay of Biscay, and it pretty much worked. I threw in a few northerly jibes to make sure I stayed north of the wind shadow of the Cape. It works pretty well. Last night, unfortunately, the wind turned westerly and I had to cover quite a lot of excess ground to make the final stretch across the bay. But, you know, still, it could have been worse. I was on the right side of the wind, at least. Better this than the alternative, which would have been to go up here and then find myself going pretty much straight downwind. So yeah, that's what it was. Basically an 11-day race for the leaders. Let's see if we can find our friends. Yep, here's Jerome off the Cape. Now, is Gaz loaded at the moment? Here's JL. Okay, so technically closer to the finish line, but completely run aground onto, where's the border? Spain. I don't know where Portugal starts, sorry. Completely run aground, so we can expect Jerome to have a more direct route into the Bay of Biscay here. Could well do this in less time than I did, and as you can see, he's 150 miles shorter route, less of a long way around than I went. The challenge that these guys are going to have, Jerome and Gaz, is this enormous storm coming into the bay. And the real sailors as well. Let me just complete the recap and then we'll talk about what's coming up in the future. So I started us here. Look, here's the equator convergence zone where the trade winds meet. So I deliberately started the race just as, what's his name? Can't remember the winners. Charlie Dallin and co. were crossing a little north of the equator. So we joined with them there. Gaz and Jerome, as discussed, took the most upwind course, got an early lead in terms of distance to the finish. Yeah, look, here's Gaz upwind and Jerome upwind and me slipping downwind. Perhaps foreshadowing what was to come, the real boats went aggressively across the wind, as you can see, actually travelling quite a considerable distance to the west in order to be on a something approaching a beam reach instead of what we were doing. I was tacking somewhat and the other guys were beating really hard into the trade winds, but the real sailors and the ultimate winner of our race, Plam, even went west to get a good angle, good point of sail on the trade winds. Yeah, so this is the characteristic of the race. Trades blowing from the east. Doldrums, I was later corrected, is the wrong term. It's the horse latitudes and then into the North Atlantic. So yeah, I slipped further and further downwind, which turned out to be fine in the end, and the real sailors started to get ahead of us on their more favourable point of sail. Still going, still going, still going. Had some nice days of sailing. Temperatures back down there were still about 22 degrees, very pleasant. But here's the big... This is the reason the short course for Gaz and Jerome didn't pay off, this big and very persistent high pressure system. Going along, going along. That's Jerome's sail, so not sure when that dates from. Oh, and I've lost my place, how annoying. Sorry, forgive me. Easy to do that. And then as you can see, right, so the real fleet, well, they actually came in south of the Azores, whereas I travelled pretty much north and then started a big curving arc into the bay from the Azores. So at this point they were south of us, or rather south of where we would eventually end up. Screenshots, screenshots, screenshots. Yeah, and then so here's a screenshot from Joe. So here's Joe again on a nice curving broad reach towards the Bay of Biscay with me here in the bottom left. Hot. Well, not hot on his heels, but on his heels, and Joe trying to catch up with the most northerly competitor, the guy called Blam. Jerome playing around with flying 3 sails. We're having a good chat about why a run is not the fastest point of sail. As I say, there's this huge storm coming in. I capsized so many. I would have completely died if this had been me in real life. Yeah, and then saw the short stay. So what are we dealing with now? As I say, we're dealing with this massive storm that's coming in. So I guess if I come in here and I switch to Vendee, the issue the guys are going to have is, where was Jerome on the map? He was somewhere here, wasn't he? So this is the challenge that Jerome and Gaz have got. They're going to be attempting something like this. Going in these strong winds in these boats, they can be expecting to be doing at least 15 knots, I guess. Could be much more. Could be like 20 knots. So what I'm expecting to see is they will have no trouble making ground. But let me hang on. Saturday, so okay, midnight tonight. They could even be as far as into the bay at 20 knots. Wow. Okay, so maybe they can get ahead of it. But then the middle of tomorrow, Saturday, as they're coming into the bay, this enormous, I mean, that's quite an optimistic speed forecast. It's quite hard to get that fast with the wind behind you, so let's call it 15 knots instead. Yeah, so lunchtime tomorrow, Jerome could be well into the Bay of Biscay, but then we'll get absolutely pounded by this, what would in real life be presumably an incredibly dangerous storm, crashing straight into the bay. So this is going to be a real challenge for the real sailors, and quite inconvenient for Jerome and Gaz as well. I heard them saying on the commentary that some of the real sailors might have to wait this out. So those of us who managed to get in ahead of it may prove to have had an advantage. Or maybe this colossal amount of wind will just help them skip in at 25 knots. Don't know. We will see. It will be an exciting one for Gaz and Jerome. Okay. I think that's my update. Thanks for listening.